In this video, we're going to answer the question, how many hours a day does it take to homeschool? This is a question that many of you have asked me, and that's why I have this channel, is to help you and encourage you as much as possible in your homeschooling journey. I want to share with you a couple of things. First of all, I think there's some things that are really important to consider when you are trying to determine how many hours of school your particular child is going to do each day. And then I'm going to give you just some very general guidelines on how many hours of school you can kind of anticipate for each grade level. And at the very end, I'm going to just give you a really quick bit of encouragement. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a better idea of being able to determine how many hours each day your particular child should be doing school. So let's jump in and get started. The first thing to consider is your homeschool laws where you live. This is really important because laws for homeschooling do vary from state to state. And of course, if you're in a different country, they're going to vary there as well. And so there are some places that require you to get a certain number of hours in each day to count for homeschooling. And so you want to be aware of those laws and try to be in compliance with them as much as possible. Now, keep in mind that if you're where you live requires a certain number of hours each day, that doesn't mean that your child has to have their nose in a book or have a pencil and paper in front of them that entire time. Playing outside can count as PE, doing chores around the house, doing laundry, making things in the kitchen with you obviously can count as home economics. When they are doing field trips, watching educational TV shows, reading books that for leisure, all of that can be counted towards school. So those are just some things to keep in mind, that even if your area that you live in requires a certain number of hours, it doesn't mean that your child has to be actually sitting at a desk doing schoolwork that entire time. Another thing to consider is your unique child. All of us have been created differently, and that is what makes us unique. And so we want to take into consideration our child's unique learning capabilities, their attention spans, and all of that. So what I want to do is give you 4 examples using 4 of my own children, just to share with you and maybe give you a better idea of how you might actually take into consideration your unique child when determining the number of hours you're going to homeschool. I have one child who is very academic. They are not only motivated to learn, they learn really easily. And so they retain information. They read something and they retain it almost instantly. For this child, my challenge was making sure I wasn't asking them to do too much schoolwork. It would be easy for me to say, hey, you know what? Their age range should maybe be getting schoolwork done, need about 3 hours to do school, and they're getting it done in an hour and a half. Maybe I should fill in that time. And what I realized was I was giving them busy work. If they can learn 3 hours of information in an hour and a half, then they learn it in an hour and a half and they can be done with school. I wanted to stop giving them busy work just to fill up those 3 hours. Now, this particular child loved doing school, so they often did school for 3 or more hours because they were just motivated and self-driven and they wanted to learn more, and that was fine. But I had to make sure that what I was actually requiring of that particular child was reasonable for them. I didn't want to just fill them up with busy work. So that child actually ended up doing less hours, or I ended up requiring less hours from that child. Basically, I would just give them the schoolwork that I thought was, a good amount of schoolwork for them to do that day. And if they got it done in a shorter amount of time, then they got it done in a shorter amount of time. But they often would do even more, go above and beyond, because that was their personality. I have another child, a second child, who is self-motivated, but academics don't come easily to this child. This child wants to do well. They want to succeed at school, but they do struggle. Things take a little bit longer to stick with this child. This child is very much like me when I was in school. When I would come home to do my homework, it would take me 4 or 5 hours to get done what a lot of my friends were getting done in 2 hours. And while my friends and I were both getting A's in school, I just had to reread things several times. I had to take extra notes. I needed to go back and review the information. It just takes me longer to retain information. And so that's how this particular child is. And so I have had to do a couple things. One, I want this child to know and be aware that they do need to add a little bit more time into their school time in learning information, because I want them to recognize when they're an adult, their coworkers might be able to accomplish a task in, let's say, an hour, where it might take them a little bit longer, just because they need to think through things a little bit more slowly and carefully. And so this child does know that they are going to probably have maybe an hour more than another sibling at that same grade level. So if this child was in 3rd grade, they might know that they're going to probably do an hour more of school than maybe their sibling did in 3rd grade. And that's just a reality that they need to be aware of. However, I don't want this child to be doing school all day. I was doing school 4 or 5 hours. That was ridiculous. Doing homework, I should say, 4 or 5 hours. That was ridiculous. And so homeschooling allows us to take into consideration our unique child. And so for this particular child, I know that's going to take them longer to retain information. My goal is that they know the information. Their best way of retaining information is by reading it through a couple times and taking notes. That means that I'm probably not going to require them to do as many of the assignments and activities, because those assignments and activities don't help them retain the information as much as reading through something a couple times and taking really good notes. I still have them do some of the assignments and activities, but not all of them. I kind of cut that down, knowing that they're going to have to spend more time reading and kind of digesting the information. And again, I have a 3rd child who is even different still. This child is, again, very motivated, learns very quickly, but is a perfectionist. This child will reread the same information over and over again. They will read the directions numerous times. They will double check and triple check and quadruple check their work just to make sure they did it correctly. With this child, I have to set limits. I have to say, look, your history should take you this amount of time. Maybe that's 45 minutes. You should be able to get your history done in 45 minutes. And I really try to help them learn how to get that work done in 45 minutes. I've had to say to this child, read the assignment one time, read the lesson one time, read the directions one time, write the answers, and do the assignment, the activity or whatever. Do it one time and only check it that one time. If there's still time left in that 45 minutes and you want to go back and double check the directions, if you want to go back and double check your work, that's fine. But I want you to go through and do everything one time and one time only. So with this child, they're more like the first child that I talked about, in the sense that they're more academic oriented and retain information really well. But this child is a perfectionist and will spend hours upon hours upon hours doing school just to make sure they did everything perfectly. And I've had to kind of help them to learn some techniques to be able to just continue on with school and not get hung up on one particular task. And then finally, I have another child who is not motivated to do schoolwork at all. This child has some issues with laziness. Maybe you have a child like this as well. This child doesn't really have any academic struggles or anything like that they're dealing with. They just flat out are lazy. If they're motivated to do school, this child can get schoolwork done like that. But most of the time, they're not motivated. And so this child will literally sit and stare at something for hours on end just to tell me, hey, it's been this number of hours and I'm not done with school, so I can just be done, right? To which I have had to say, no, this child is required to get all of the schoolwork done, no matter how long it takes them, because this child needs some help in learning how to start a task and actually complete a task. This is a character issue with this child, and they need to be held accountable. Now, obviously, I have some grace here and some understanding. I'm not like, you do all this schoolwork and you get it done, you could be up till midnight. There's some grace here. I let this child, well, first of all, I make sure that the task that I'm asking them to do can be done in a reasonable amount of time. So if I think that an assignment is either just going to be a waste of time for them, which this child is well aware if it's just busy work. So I do cut out busy work. If I think it's going just to be too long, I will cut things out and have them not do things. But the tasks that I am asking them to do, I want them to this child to complete. Now, I also have some grace there. I let this child know that, if I see that you are working very diligently on this particular assignment and you are not able, and it's just dragging out and you're not able to complete it in a reasonable amount of time, we will either do one of two things. I'll let you just stop that task, that assignment, and we'll pick it up tomorrow and you'll move on to another subject. Or we're going to complete this one, but I'm going to let you skip another subject and you'll just do that subject tomorrow and we won't do this one tomorrow, or something like that. So I do want them to know that for me, the goal is not necessarily that they get every task done or assignment done, but I want to see that they're working diligently, that they're not being lazy. And so if this child can show me that they are working diligently and they still can't get the assignment done, maybe it's just a really difficult topic for them or information and they're just struggling with that, but they're being diligent about it, then I'll have some grace for them. But for the most part, this child is required to get all of their schoolwork done, no matter how long it takes. So as you can see, taking into consideration your unique child is really important. The 4 children that I shared with you are still different than my other 3. I've got 7 total. They're all unique, and the way that I determine how much schoolwork each of them is going to do varies from child to child and really year to year, depending on their needs and their struggles. And so I know your children are unique and you need to make sure you're taking that into consideration. A third thing to consider is the goals that you have for your child. Obviously, if you want a rigorous academic education for your child, then you're going to be spending more time doing school with that child. I mean, that's just the reality of, a rigorous academic education means they need to be in the books more and studying more. Then if that's not a goal that you have, maybe then you won't need to be doing school as many hours. And finally, you need to consider the curriculum that you are using. There is some curriculum that prides itself and markets itself on being quick and easy, something that you can just do in a very short amount of time, versus other curriculum that might take longer. And so, for me, this year, we decided that the best thing for our family was going to be doing a lot of video instruction. So our kids are doing a lot of their homeschooling this year via videos, and that means that it takes a little bit more time. So I've had to take that into consideration, and as I've just adjusted our school hours, I've had to increase the amount of time each child is doing for each particular grade level, because we are using curriculum that just takes more time. So if you have a curriculum that is very quick and easy, very short lessons, then obviously the amount of time your child needs to do school is going to be significantly shorter and less than maybe what my children are doing this year. So hopefully those are helpful to you as you consider, how many hours a day your particular child is going to be doing school. Now I want to share with you just some very general guidelines, and let me emphasize very general guidelines on how many hours a day of homeschooling for each grade level. For kindergarten, we are looking at 30 to 45 minutes, and that is it. And even then, with kindergarten, in that 30 to 45 minutes, you're going to probably want to break up that time into 10 or 15 minute chunks. So maybe you are doing like 10 minutes of phonics, and then they're going outside and playing, and then maybe they're going to come in after snack and do maybe a 10-minute math activity, and then you're going to play some more, go out and run errands, and maybe in the afternoon you're going to do the last 10 minutes or 15 minutes your art activity, or some history or science that you think is important to do or whatever. But kindergarten, your focus usually, again, general guidelines, but usually kindergarten, the focus really is phonics and math. And so that can be completed within 30-45 minutes at the most. First grade is about an hour. You're still probably focusing on phonics and getting your child to read and on math. And so an hour usually is sufficient. If you have a child who's already reading or you're wanting to add in some extra subjects, or your child has a longer attention span or all of that, you might push it to an hour and a half, but an hour is usually, hour and a half is usually sufficient for first grade. Second, third, and fourth grade, you're looking at about 2 hours. Fifth and sixth grade, you could probably just go shoot for about 3 hours. Seventh grade and up, you are looking at probably 4 or more hours, because now your student is really getting into some kind of meatier academics. They're going to need more time to not only read and learn the information, but to process it and to think critically about it. So I would say, seventh grade and then high school, you're going to be looking at 4 or 5, maybe even more hours of school for the day. And again, that is considering the things that we've already talked about, and your own unique child, the curriculum, your goals, and your state's requirements. Hopefully this video was helpful for you as you determine how many hours each day you are going to homeschool your child. I want to leave you with one little bit of encouragement at the end here, and that is that God has designed the family in a very unique way. And that means that you as the parent not only love your child more than anyone else, but you know your child better than anyone else. And so you can determine the best how many hours of school your child needs to do each day. And that might vary from day to day, from week to week, from month to month, from year to year, as you take into consideration your unique child, your unique family situation, and the things that are going on in your life. So just know that it doesn't really matter what I say or what someone else says. If you are prayerfully seeking the Lord about your homeschool, then He will guide and direct you to make the best decisions for your family. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to like it and share it with other homeschool mom friends. And if you aren't already subscribed to my channel, make sure that you do that so that you can be notified of new videos in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again really soon. Bye-bye.